What is clean architecture? Why do we need it? And how to implement it? I'm going to answer it all in this video, so stick around till the end. Hey everyone, welcome back to part 1 of Creating Discord from Scratch series. My name is Tanish and in this video, I'm going to talk about clean architecture and MVVM in Android development. Clean architecture is a method of software development where someone is able to identify what your program does merely by looking at your code. Implementing clean architecture helps us develop quality code that performs better, is easier to alter, and has fewer dependencies. Now, why do we need clean architecture? Let's try to understand it with an analogy. Imagine a situation where we are given a task to make cheese sandwich. In case A, we have one person who is doing all the jobs. So he plants and harvests the wheat, processes it to make bread, then he also milks the cow and makes cheese, and finally puts the two pieces together to make the cheese sandwich. On the other hand, we have divided this task to separate groups of people where each person has to do his part of job only. So we have a farmer whose responsibility is to plant and harvest wheat, then he passes it to the wheat processor who has to convert that wheat into flour. Then he passes it further to the bakery which would make bread out of it. Then we have a dairy which milks the cow and makes cheese. Then we have a shopkeeper whose responsibility is to keep both these items in stock so our consumer can easily get both the items from the shop and easily make the cheese sandwich. Here, as you can see, people are very less dependent on each other. So the consumer who has to create the cheese sandwich doesn't need to depend on dairy, the wheat processor, or the bakery. He only depends on the shopkeeper, which would provide him with all the products. In clean architecture, we have a similar approach. Instead of putting all our code into one file or the activity file, instead what we do is to divide the code into separate layers, and these layers are independent of each other. This makes it really easy for us to debug, unit test, or scale our application. Now, one key benefit of using clean architecture in Android development is its improved scalability. By organizing our code into separate layers of abstractions, it makes it easier to add a new feature or to remove an existing one. And by decoupling our code this way, we are able to make our app more maintainable and easier to update over time. MVVM is an architecture pattern that fits well with clean architecture. It stands for Model View View Model. It basically separates the program logic from the user interface, which makes our project loosely coupled, which means each component has very little or near to no dependency of other components. In Android development, we can implement clean architecture and MVVM using Android Jetpack libraries such as live data or flows, view models, and data binding. These libraries provide us a convenient way to organize our code. Live data is an observable data holder class that allows us to observe changes in data across different components of our app. This makes it easy to keep our UI updated with the latest data. On the other hand, flows are a way to represent streams of data, and the data flows in this stream. So, that's where the flows part came from. Now, this stream of data can be observed and transformed asynchronously. Now, view model is a class which holds the data for our UI, and it also manages the communication with the data sources. Benefit of using view model is that it can survive through configuration changes. These configuration changes causes the current running activity of the app to recreate itself, which means any data or variables which the activity was holding is flushed and recreated. Now, the view model can survive through these configuration changes as it is bound to the life cycle of the activity. That's why we store any data that is to be presented to the user inside view model, and we don't have to worry about losing data through configuration changes anymore. By using flows coroutines in combination with view models, we create a reactive architecture for our app that automatically updates the user interface whenever the data changes. This makes it easier to build responsive apps that provide a great user experience. When using clean architecture and MVVM in Android development, there are some best practices that you should follow. For example, you should organize your code into separate modules for each layer of abstraction. For example, we'll have a separate module for the data layer, the domain layer, and the presentation layer. And it is a great practice to use dependency injection, as it helps us decouple different parts of the app and makes it easier to test. In conclusion, Android architecture and MVVM are powerful tools for Android development that helps us create scalable, testable, and maintainable apps. So that's it for this video. In the next video, we'll finally develop the UI for the 3 authentication screens. Now, if you learned something from this video, be sure to hit that like button, subscribe if you are new to the channel, head over to my Patreon to support this channel. Well, until next time, keep coding, keep creating.